NIT's hazmat program. You probably already know that hazardous materials can be very dangerous, especially when they're handled in the wrong way. That's why this piece of your training is so valuable. What's required of you, your employer, and the shipper when hauling hazmat? What are the packaging and labeling requirements? The loading requirements? How does the paperwork get handled? How do you recognize hazardous materials and communicate their risk to others? We'll answer those questions through this course, and there's no way to talk about hazmat without talking about regulations. Now, regulations are not exactly the most exciting thing, but we've put together a program that helps you work through the regulations so you'll have an understanding of what's required to keep you and the public safe when handling and hauling hazardous materials.
Welcome to NIT's Hazardous Materials ELDT course. In this course, we will go over the general requirements pertaining to hazardous material operations. Daily, roughly 3.7 million tons of hazardous material are shipped across the United States by truck, and the regulations are very strict and require a professional driver to be knowledgeable about the material that they are carrying. The regulations are designed to prevent hazardous material incidents and releases, as well as protect the public and infrastructure. We will start by going over the hazardous material classes and hazardous materials table found in the Hazardous Material Regulations, or HMR. Column 1. Column 1 tells the shipping mode, the entry effects, and other information concerning the shipping description. The plus sign shows the proper shipping name, hazard class, and packing group to use, even if the material doesn't meet the hazard class definition. The letter A means the hazardous material described in column 2 is subject to HMR only when offered or intended for transport by air, unless it is a hazardous substance or hazardous waste. The letter W means the hazardous material described in column 2 is subject to HMR only when offered or intended for transportation by water, unless it is a hazardous substance, hazardous waste, or a marine pollutant. The letter D means the proper shipping name is appropriate for describing materials for domestic transportation, but may not be the proper name for international transportation. The letter I identifies the proper shipping name that is used to describe materials in international transportation. A different shipping name may be used when only domestic transportation is involved. The letter G means the hazardous material described in column 2 is the generic shipping name. A generic shipping name must be accompanied by a technical name on the shipping paper. A technical name is the specific chemical that makes the product hazardous. Column 2 lists the proper shipping names and descriptions of the regulated materials. The shipping paper must show proper shipping names. Names shown in italics are not proper shipping names. Column 3. Column 3 shows a material's hazard class or division, or may have the entry forbidden. Never transport a division or the entry forbidden. Placard hazardous material shipments based on quantity and hazard class. You can choose which placards to use if you know 3 things. First, the material's hazard class. Second, the amount being shipped. And third, the amount of all hazardous materials of all classes on your vehicle. Column 4. This column shows the identification number for each proper shipping name. The ID number may be preceded by the letters UN, NA, or ID. Column 5. This column displays the packing group in Roman numerals assigned to that material. Column 6. The column shows the hazard warning labels the shippers must put on the packages of hazmat. Column 7 shows the additional special provisions that apply to this material. If an entry shows in this column, you need to refer to the federal regulations for specific information. Column 8, A, B, and C. This is a 3-part column showing the section numbers covering the packaging requirements for each hazardous material. Column 9 and 10 do not apply to transportation by highway, but are good to know if you need shipping information for air or vessel transport. So column 9, both A and B, this column deals with the quantity limitations by air for passenger and cargo aircraft. In column 10, A and B, this column will deal with the vessel stowage requirements. Each person who offers hazardous material for transportation shall describe the hazardous materials on the shipping paper that meets the requirements of the hazardous material regulations. A carrier is not allowed to transport a hazardous material unless it is accompanied by a shipping paper that is prepared in accordance with the HMR. The basic description includes the proper shipping name, hazard class, identification number, and packaging group. The class names, division numbers, or subsidiary hazard classes may be entered in parentheses. Entries are required for number and type packaging and weight. Let's go over shipping paper and how all the information can be entered. Shipping papers must include pages if there is more than one. For example, all HMR must be on page 1 of 3. A proper shipping description for each hazardous material. The basic shipping description must be in order identification number. Proper shipping name. Hazard class of division. The packaging group is to be displayed in Roman numerals and may be preceded by the letters PG. The description must also show the total quantity in units of measure and the number and type of packages. A shipper certification signed by the shipper saying they prepared the shipment in accordance with those regulations. If the shipping paper describes both hazardous and non-hazardous materials, the hazardous materials must be entered first, highlighted in a contrasting color, or identified by an X in the column captioned HM. The letters RQ may appear and be placed in the column instead of an X if the material is a reportable quantity. A reportable quantity for hazardous substances is the amount of the material that, if released, requires immediate reporting to the National Response Center. If the substance is a reportable quantity, it must be shown in the shipping description and the name of the hazardous substance if it is not already the proper shipping name. If a material has the G in column 1, the technical name of the hazardous substance must be shown. The basic marking requirements consist of proper shipping name and identification number of the hazardous material contained in the package. The marking should be durable, in English, and not obscured by other markings or labels. Depending on the material, there may be additional marking requirements. For non-bulk packaging, technical names must be marked in parentheses in association with the proper shipping name, if required by 172.203 subpart K. Identification numbers are not required for ORMD and limited quantities. The name and address of the shipper or co-signee is also a required marking on the packages. Bulk packaging markings. Identification numbers must be on each side and for each end of the package. Whether it's 3,785 liters or 1,000 gallons or more, or for cylinders permanently mounted on a tube trailer for motor vehicles. Identification numbers on two opposing sides for packages less than 3,785 liters or 1,000 gallons. Technical names are not required for bulk packages. You may not offer to transport a container unless the HM markings apply to the material contained in the package. Labeling. Each person who offers for transport or transports a hazardous material shall ensure the package is properly labeled. Each person who offers for transportation any hazardous materials subject to HMR shall comply with the applicable placarding requirements. Placards may not be displayed on any packaging, freight container, unit load device, or the motor vehicle unless the placard represents a hazardous material currently being transported. Unless a cargo tank is being cleaned and purged, it must be placarded for the remaining product and fumes left in the tank. Placards must be at least 3 inches away from any other marking, kept clear of any attachments or devices like doors, kept clean and undamaged so they can be easily seen, be affixed to the background of contrasting color, and be durable enough to survive normal operating conditions. Each bulk package, freight container, unit load device, or transport vehicle containing any quantity of hazardous materials must be placarded on each side and each end with the placards specified in Tables 1 and Table 2. Table 1 must be placarded in any amount carried. Table 2 is to be placarded if there is 1,001 pounds or more to be carried. The common exemption, when 2 or more Table 2 materials are contained in the same transport vehicle, the dangerous placard may be used instead of specific placard required for each hazard class. However, when 1,000 kilograms or 2,205 pounds or more of a single category of the hazardous material is loaded onto a transport vehicle, the placard that's specified for that material must be displayed. The regulation requires an emergency response telephone number to be placed on the shipping paper. The telephone number must be always monitored when the material is in transportation. The number must be to a person who is knowledgeable of the hazardous material being shipped and the appropriate emergency response procedures, or a person who has immediate access to a person who has such knowledge. This telephone number must be readily identified on the shipping paper. Emergency response information that must appear on the shipping paper or in a separate document carried with the shipping paper itself. It must have a description of the hazardous material, immediate hazards to health, immediate methods for handling small or large fires or spills or leaks, and preliminary first aid measures. The shipper's responsibility is to classify and describe the hazardous material in accordance with parts 172 and 173. The shipper must determine that the package or container is an authorized packaging, including all special requirements, and that the package has been manufactured, assembled, and marked in accordance with HMR. The shipper is also required to provide placards when a load of hazardous material is required to be placarded. The shipper must also certify on the shipping paper that the shipment has been prepared according to the rules. Shippers must also provide emergency response information to the motor carrier for each hazardous material being shipped. Shippers must also keep a copy of shipping papers for a period of at least 2 years, 3 years if hauling hazardous waste. When in the vehicle, the shipping paperwork must be within driver's arm's reach while the driver is seatbelted in. When the driver is not located in the vehicle, the shipping paperwork must be on the driver's seat or in the pouch on the driver's side door. The pouch must be easily identifiable as a hazardous material paperwork. You have now completed Section 1. Please move to the end of course quiz and check your knowledge.